Sophie Cunningham didn't light up the WNBA this week with a game-winning shot or a viral highlight. She did it with her words. During a recent podcast, Sophie spoke the kind of truth most players only whisper about behind closed doors, and in doing so, she set the entire basketball world ablaze. Her message was simple. When you have a generational player like Caitlin Clark, your offense should run through her. Period. Just like it did for LeBron James in his prime. Just like it does for every once-in-a-lifetime superstar. But that single logical statement sent shockwaves through the league. Within hours, Sophie went from respected veteran to lightning rod. Social media turned her name into a battlefield. Supporters called her bold and honest, while critics branded her attention-seeking, arrogant, or worse, divisive. What was meant as a basketball take quickly became something much bigger. A reflection of the WNBA's uneasy balance between old-school tradition and the new wave of stardom Caitlin Clark represents. When Sophie spoke, she wasn't speculating. She was speaking from experience. She'd been there, on the floor, in the huddle, battling through growing pains alongside Caitlin Clark on a fever team struggling to find its identity. She wasn't talking theory. She was describing what she'd seen firsthand, the moments when the offense thrived because the ball was in Caitlin's hands, and the moments it fell apart when it wasn't. Yet somehow that truth became twisted. Fans began spinning her words into something they weren't. Suddenly, people claimed Sophie was calling out teammates, undermining the coach, or stirring up drama. Some even said she should have kept her mouth shut altogether. But in reality, all Sophie had done was speak what nearly every analyst had been saying all season, just not out loud. Because the truth is, Caitlin Clark isn't just a good player. She's a generational talent. She changes the pace, the rhythm, the flow of every possession she touches. And in Sophie's mind, that means the system should bend around her, not the other way around. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't controversy. It was basketball logic. But logic doesn't always survive in the modern media storm. Within hours, clips from Sophie's podcast went viral. Every sports page, every Twitter thread, every debate show was dissecting her tone, her intent, her loyalty. One side praised her for saying what everyone else was too scared to admit. The other accused her of betrayal, claiming she was chasing clout or airing private locker room business. And then, as often happens in sports, the conversation got ugly. Personal attacks started flying. Some mocked her podcast, saying she cared more about content than chemistry. Others took it further, suggesting jealousy, bitterness, or hidden agendas. The debate wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about identity, loyalty, and who gets to speak in the WNBA. Even some Caitlin Clark fans, the same ones Sophie thought she was defending, turned on her. They said her comments added unnecessary pressure to Caitlin, feeding headlines the rookie didn't need. Ironically, they missed the point entirely. Sophie wasn't criticizing Caitlin. She was validating her, standing up for her, saying out loud what the rest of the team should have already known, that their offense only works when Caitlin leads it. But nuance doesn't go viral. Outrage does. So the narrative kept spinning, and Sophie became the villain in a story she never meant to start. The media painted her as a distraction, a problem, a loudmouth who didn't know her place. All because she said something that would have been considered common sense if it came from a coach or an analyst. Inside the Fever locker room, the tension was real. Some teammates quietly agreed with her, they'd seen it too. Others felt blindsided, frustrated that an internal philosophy had become a public talking point. The team, already trying to build chemistry around Caitlin's meteoric rise, suddenly found itself divided by perception. Caitlin Clark, for her part, stayed silent. Not a word on social media. No quote, no like, no hint of how she felt. And that silence only made things worse. Fans began reading between the lines, twisting every post, every press conference expression into meaning. Some said her quiet meant agreement. Others claimed it was disapproval. Either way, Caitlin's silence became its own headline, and Sophie's words kept echoing louder. Soon, it wasn't even about basketball anymore. It was about control. Who has the right to speak? Who gets silenced? Why are women in sports constantly told to stay polite when men can say the exact same thing and be praised as leaders? Because that's what Sophie's controversy really exposed, the double standard. When Draymond Green calls out coaching strategies, he's celebrated for his fire. When Sophie Cunningham gives her opinion, she's disrespecting the team. Male players are applauded for passion. Women are punished for honesty. Sophie's situation revealed that hypocrisy in real time. She wasn't some fringe player seeking attention. She'd earned her stripes, known for her grit, her defense, her willingness to go to war for her teammates. Fans had literally seen her step between Caitlin Clark and opponents to protect her during heated games. She'd taken elbows and fouls that weren't meant for her. And now, those same fans were turning on her for saying Caitlin deserved more control. The irony couldn't be sharper. Behind the scenes, even Fever staff weren't thrilled. Some reportedly wanted to shift focus back to the team's growth, not another headline. Others quietly agreed with Sophie but feared saying so publicly. That's how fragile things had become. Honesty itself was now dangerous. But Sophie didn't back down. She didn't apologize, didn't clarify, didn't beg for forgiveness. She just kept showing up, practicing hard, and posting cryptic captions like, "Truth never fears the spotlight." It was her way of saying, "You can twist my words, but I'm not hiding." And then something unexpected happened. The tide started to turn. A clip resurfaced online, that moment from earlier in the season when Sophie physically defended Caitlin on the court, stepping between her and an angry opponent. Fans began to remember who Sophie really was. Not a troublemaker, but a teammate who always had Caitlin's back. Suddenly, her words didn't look like betrayal. They looked like loyalty. That shift changed everything. Influential sports pages began defending her, calling out the double standard. Commentators admitted she might have been right all along. And younger players across the league started calling her brave for speaking her truth. Without meaning to, Sophie had become a symbol, not just of honesty but of evolution. She showed that the WNBA couldn't grow if players were afraid to speak. Her controversy forced the league, the fans, and even the media to ask hard questions about how women athletes are treated when they step outside the script. Because here's the truth. Sophie did everything the modern sports world tells athletes to do. She built her brand. She started a podcast. She connected with fans. That's the contradiction women in sports live with every day. Be authentic, but only if it's convenient. But Sophie's defiance changed the narrative. What began as outrage evolved into respect. By refusing to back down, she reminded everyone that progress doesn't happen through silence. It happens when someone dares to say what everyone else is thinking. Even Caitlin Clark eventually broke her silence. In a brief interview, she thanked Sophie for always having my back. Just 7 words, but it changed everything. It reminded the world that this was never about division. It was about 2 competitors navigating the pressure of fame and leadership in real time. By then, Sophie's reputation had come full circle. From villain to truth-teller, from target to trailblazer. What she said about Caitlin Clark and the Fever's offense wasn't just an opinion, it was a spark. A spark that forced the WNBA to confront its growing pains, its culture of control, and its fear of uncomfortable conversations. Because in the end, this was never just about basketball. It was about freedom. The freedom to speak, to think, to challenge, to be more than a logo or a talking point. Sophie Cunningham didn't just defend Caitlin Clark. She defended every player's right to speak their truth without being silenced for it. And as the dust settles, one thing is clear. She may have started a controversy, but what she really did was start a conversation. One that could change the WNBA forever.